Let's go to another question. We have one right here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Dan. I'm actually a mortgage lender, and just wanted to add, I have one quick comment and a quick question for you, Anthony. Gentleman here in the back made a comment that the FHA is a large reason why the housing market had increased. Actually, the FHA has tightened up on their regulations, and both in down payment and in their cost of insurance for the average homeowner.
And their credit score.
And the credit scoring. Fannie Mae actually is taking a new lead step. They've come out with a new initiative. They test marketed it in Wisconsin successfully. They've gone to 100% financing. We'll have it in Massachusetts within 3 weeks. So 100% financing is back for qualified home buyers that are educated. The Fannie Mae initiative has been, it's run for years, but with the educated homeowner, they've had very low foreclosure rates, extremely low foreclosure rates. So that's pretty exciting to us. And then Anthony, a quick question for you, please. This morning, as I was sitting in traffic on Sorrow Drive, about 20 minutes late getting here, WBZ broke a story that Massachusetts was one of the 3 lowest housing stock added states over the last 10 years. And that obviously would speak to stability in this market.
Yes, and that is, well, we all can talk about this. Massachusetts obviously has less land in which to develop homes, and we have an older housing stock. Tell us about that, Tony.
We actually have the oldest housing stock of any state in the entire country. And it shares a number of characteristics, not just with age, but it also has the highest percentage of homes with master bedrooms on the second floor of any state in the country. What gets built in the ways in which that new housing is different than the housing stock that's out there today imbues some of those new houses with more value, particularly those that have master bedrooms on the first floor. And then just by the very fact of being new, they're a much smaller percentage of what's out there to choose from. And it creates a situation, our state is a difficult one in which to get a permit. That's, in some ways, you could say that's part of the reason why our peak to trough values are the 4th best in the nation, because there was not the kind of oversupply that exists, in the 5 states where over half the foreclosures in the country are. That's not the case in our state.
But on the other hand, during the downturn, that really helps us. If the economy turns around and we are desperate for young people to be here, that those restrictions that we have in terms of permitting, building codes, and so forth actually hurt us economically. And that's why, as I said before, laws like 40B, 40R are critical, not just for housing, they're critical for the prosperity of the state.
It's the same picture you just painted of Hull.
Yes.
If you want the big picture of the economy to work, there needs to be a variety of housing choices, and that variety can't exist if one can't get a permit.
Yeah, sure.
And the permitting has been an issue for many years, and I believe Professor Bluestone worked with the Massachusetts Association of Realtors. We did a study a few years back, and I think because of regulatory pressures, the average permit costs it adds about $34,000 worth of cost to the average construction. And so that's, if it were easier to do, that would be savings that could be passed on to the consumer.
We have a question here in the corner. Yes.
Yes, I have 3 questions.
Let's try the first one first.
Okay, 2 questions. Regarding the Pine Hills, have any prices been reduced so as to reflect the economy? And secondly, have there been any foreclosures in the Pine Hills?
There have been a few foreclosures in the Pine Hills. It's a characteristic that comes with an economy like this, where people lose their job or their business fails, and those houses have gone back into the market and been resold. There's nothing out there in inventory today that's of that type. But that's in a place where there are 1,400 homes, something like that's bound to happen.
And what about price reductions?
There are some folks who are reselling homes at prices, if they bought in the past 3 years, those prices could be at near or even below where they paid, and there are people who bought homes before that who are still making a profit. because they bought their home, before that peak was reached. The Pine Hills is not a place where pricing has had peaks and valleys in terms of average price. Our average price today is within $10,000 of where it was in 2005 for all the sales that are occurring in the whole community.
But as we mentioned before, the entry point has changed a bit.
Well, part of it is it's like all averages. It hides the fact that it's different houses. There's a wide variety of choices, and it doesn't take a whole lot to change that. For instance, if there are 3 more $1 million houses sold than there were the year before, that changes the average in the same way if there are 3 less.
Thank you. Yes, we have a question here.
My name is Marjorie. It is said that a boat will not be able to unload its goods unless it's in dock. I was reading in the not-too-distant Wall Street Journal about the housing market in Detroit. One of you mentioned about the North Side incurring or getting together over $400,000. What is that? But in the Wall Street Journal, on the opening page, it showed that other side, the South Side. People have tried to maintain their homes, but the housing stock kept going down, down, down. So I think the mayor of Detroit said they're going to bulldoze all that section and turn it into a park. What about the working man? Where will he live? Massachusetts is certainly far ahead, but the gentleman back, he mentioned that only the well-educated and the rich, so to speak, will be able to maintain housing.
You know what? That's a great question. Let's look at what are some of the communities where you have working housing, entry-level housing,
Where are they
affordable
going to
housing? Kevin.
Anthony, I can only tell you about the market I'm familiar with the most, and that's Springfield. Springfield is the urban center in the western part of the state. That's where we see the majority of first-time home buyers going because of the affordability factor. And I don't want to tell you what the other man was indicating about education, but I think he was talking more about knowing more information about your mortgage and the process increases the likelihood of them being able to pay it. I don't think he was talking about their education level, what grade they achieved. So for me, Springfield, it's you find the place where there's the affordability, and what we've seen in our market is by buying those first-time homes, it allows the folks that own them to make the next step up the housing ladder. And maybe they do move to the suburbs or a different neighborhood within the same community, but that's what we've seen.
Let me
Barry?
add to this, if I could, Marjorie. I mean, part of our problem here, and I keep coming back to it, is that we need to have more affordable housing, and it's difficult to find it here. There are communities where housing has become more affordable. They're not in they're not in all the suburbs, obviously, but in Revere, in Lynn, in parts of Boston. But the other problem we have is for those people who can't get in the housing market because they don't have the credit score, they don't have the income, or they have unstable jobs. Part of the problem we had is that precisely as the recession hit, and hit in Massachusetts as well, rents actually rose. They didn't decline. So for people who had to rent, they actually saw their rents go up. And the reason for it was that you had people who are being foreclosed out of their home ownership into rental property, putting pressure on the rental market. And then you also had a lot of young people who were trying to time the market and were staying on the sidelines when they normally would have bought into the market. And therefore, there was very, very little rental property available, and therefore rents continued to rise right through 2008. Stabilized a little bit in 2009, but rents are still at almost an all-time high despite the economy. Unless we can get more production of housing, including rental housing, those rents are going to remain very high.
And I'll just take that a step further. The rents increased because of economic pressures. After 9/11 in the rental industry, we saw double-digit increases for 5 years in insurance premiums. 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, oil was at about, heating oil was $2 a gallon. The following year was $4.50 a gallon. There were some tremendous strains which impacted what the rents, what happened with the rents. And then one last thing, and I'll talk about this, and I've experienced this. I'm actually missing my first-time renter. So for all of you folks who have kids in college, when they graduate, do not let them move into their old bedroom. Force them out. Tell them they have to go rent someplace else, because we do need that in the economy.
Sure.
That's another stimulus program.
The stimulus program, kick the kids out after they get back from college. Excellent idea. Okay, we have time for only a couple of more questions.